All right, good morning again. Now it's great to see this room all filled up. I never imagined that we would be all filled up really. And it's a great blessing. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I'd like to especially welcome my mom. She hasn't visited for a while. She said she didn't even know, hasn't even seen Thomas yet, so that's terrific. Um, so yes, and it's good also even to see Jeline here. I haven't seen, last week we saw her and it's been so many years, like, it's great to see all the brethren back again. Now, it's always exciting to come to worship because, this is our spiritual family. And this morning I wanted to talk about patience. Uh, Thank you, Thomas, for choosing those songs. It's, um, it's such an important topic and it's such an important characteristic of the Christian. As Andy said in the lesson in one of the readings last week, which we'll look at in a second, love is patience, isn't it? So patience is a core attribute, vital fruit of the Spirit. What is patience? Patience is the ability or the capacity to accept and tolerate problems or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. It's a state of endurance under difficult circumstances. And that's what we all need to try and develop. We'll read a few passages of scripture, then we'll look at some examples. All right, in James chapter 1, 2-4, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Let patience have its perfect work, it may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So do we think it a great thing when we have a tough time? Do we count it joy when you fall into trial? I'll let you think about that for a minute. And this is the passage Andy read last week. Love is patient, love is kind, and it's not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly, does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. If you actually read the passage, you will see that patience is actually described in a different form in various parts in this. So it shows you how important it is. When it talks about patience, it talks about not provoked. That's also a form of patience. It does not. It bears all things. Another form of patience, and it endures all things. That's another form of patience. So you can see it's actually an integral part. When Andy spoke last week about God's love, we know that He puts up with all our sin, and that is patience. When we look at this passage, Isaiah 53 verse 7, it's the prophecy of Jesus. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the sheep slaughter, as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. And we know that Jesus bore a lot of punishment on our behalf, and yet he did not complain. That is patience. So that is what patience is. But we know that they say patience, use it before you lose it, and that's so true. And patience is not the ability to wait, but how you act while you're waiting. I do think that in this day and age, we are becoming more impatient. And there's no question that, questioning that for whatever reason. I know, and it's something we all struggle with. I struggle with it as well, because we live in a world where everything has to be done immediately and quickly. When as I was saying, even when you look at the smartphone cameras, now we can take a picture straight away and see it. 20 years ago, you don't have such a thing. You take a picture, hope for the best. You take like 10 shots of the same thing, thinking that 6 of them will be bad and maybe 1 will be right. And you take it to the developer, the film processing studio, you wait a few days or a week for it to come back. And that's how it was. Everything was more waiting. Now everything's right at our fingertips. And I think together with that, there's a sense of entitlement. Like now you see, if you wait, I know all of us feel this way. Like you're in a supermarket and everyone's queuing up, and you happen to pick the seemingly short queue, but everybody else is going faster than you, and you feel so upset, isn't it? So you feel you're being cheated, or you made the wrong decision just because you picked the wrong queue. Likewise, when you're waiting to order your food at a restaurant or something, you get upset if they serve some other table who came in after you, right? There is a sense of impatience that you want everything here right now. So together with that, it's just people are more uptight and they're more angry all the time. Uh, and you can kind of get that sense sometimes. The only other thing is, as a side topic, now that everything is on the internet, I do feel that as Christians, even all of us have willingly outsourced our knowledge to the internet. So in the sense that nowadays, when you need to find a passage of scripture, for example, you just search, and it just amazingly pops up there. So we've forgotten how to remember things, and we've outsourced it to Google in many ways. And that's just a personal challenge, like in the past we used to have lots of memory verses in the Bible. People made a big deal to memorize the whole Bible. But now, the Bible's on your phone, so you just have to look it up. It's so easy. So in that sense, we have forgotten what, it's an evolution. I don't think it's a bad thing. It increases the standards for everyone, but I do think it's a shame people never try to remember things anymore, which is what happens. People don't bother trying to remember because the answer is always easily accessible anyway. Now we look at an example of impatience, and that's the story of Moses, Numbers 20:7-12. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock, give drink to the congregation and their animals." So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. Now you do have to understand that those people were very annoying, right? So there's a million of them, and they're complaining all the time. So it's not like a nice, peaceful congregation like you guys. But everyone is always saying, "Oh, that Moses is useless. He brought us out of Egypt so that we could die and thirst and hunger. We have no food. We want to have some nice clothes or whatever." Who knows? But they were always complaining. So Aaron and Moses gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels. Must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Water came out abundantly, and the congregation and animals drank. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe me, follow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly to the land which I have given them." Such a sad story, this one, because he did everything for so long, but just that one time he was impatient and he was upset. And because of that, he never got to. God did let him see it. He never got to enter the promised land. That's quite a sad story, but it's a moving story because it shows you why the Bible is so relevant. Because those people are real people. You can imagine that you, in that circumstance, may have done the same. God still, as we say, gave Moses a chance in that he still let the water come out of the rock, even though he hid it instead of speaking to him. But yet, that was the consequence of his action. So how does this affect us? As I mentioned, we can succumb to impatience in our daily life. Road rage. Who's not had road rage? You see pictures of it on TV all the time. Phone rage, I guess that happens as well. When we start a new project, or even, for example, when we have faced a new challenge, we often don't try or persevere for very long. We just give up. When you talk about this, I always am thankful for how I came here as a student. If I talk to William or Jim or anyone who's moved as they are older, like I remember June and Kenneth as well, the time when you come to Australia and then you find a job, so stressful. It's a very difficult thing. I mean, a lot of people actually just give up and move home, right? And it is a very difficult situation. But whatever it is, uh, we just need to have faith, and to be patient. Often, when it comes to prayer, if God doesn't answer us immediately, we give up. We don't listen or wait. And therefore we are unable to withstand trials and challenges. I mean, that happens all the time. When even in church, for example, we all know people, who come or who are very enthusiastic, they just stop or they leave, for whatever reason. And obviously, impatience leads to spiritual and emotional weakness because you're not persevering. You don't have the spirit of keep trying, keep fighting on. So Matthew 13, 19, 21 is the parable of the sower. We all know this parable. We know it very well. Anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand, the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. That's the seed on the wayside. And those who receive the seed on stony places, this is he who hears the word, receives it with joy, yet he has no root in himself, endures only for a while. Tribulation and persecution arises because of the word. Immediately he stumbles. And this is for the Christian, Galatians 6, 9, and 10. Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let's do good to all, especially to the household of faith. Why did Paul have to write that? It is obvious that even people who are good can get tired. It's obvious that all of us can grow weary. And we can forget that we shall reap in due season if we do not lose heart. And that's what it is, to be patient. These are the challenges facing the Christian. I think it is more challenging now to stay faithful. There are more distractions, and for better or for worse, we all live longer. in the old days, way old days, people live to 50 or 60, or less, 40 or 50, whatever. People died while giving birth to babies. You can't imagine that now, but it used to be 2 or 3 out of 10 maybe. And for those who have recently delivered, I don't want to pick people up, but the truth is the healthcare system now is so good. Like the baby is stuck. Imagine if it's stuck and you can't get it out. If you can't get it out in the past, people just die. All right, either you die or the baby dies, or both die. Now we can do emergency cesareans and stuff. So it has changed the whole complexity of things. And in that sense, I think nowadays people like to take control of things. They like to be in charge. You want to control everything, and all of us like that. So those are all challenges to training ourselves. I mean, there's always the temptation to change things to accommodate shorter attention spans, and that's what people tend to do. The other challenge, not necessarily a bad one, but there's so many ways we can do things now. It's always encouraging to see. I mean, the truth is, everyone's still the same. That's why the Bible is timeless. I always say this because people then cry, they laugh, they feel happiness, sadness, sorrow, despair. They had all the same emotions we have, and we can reach people if you tap into those same emotions. Because that is what it means to be human. That's what it means to be alive, right? And that is what it means, to be a Christian. So why is patience so important? Patience is the evidence of our Christian faith, hope, and love. That's how I see it. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. But the capacity to wait for results, to carry out the task to the end. We know that, Stephen had a great lesson the other day about athletes, sport. We know that we are in a marathon. We don't just run 100 meters, we have to run the whole distance. Since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let's lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Let's run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking with Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So those passages are meant to encourage us. It's hard to imagine when it comes to that kind of physical pain and suffering, it's hard to actually imagine, and I think a lot of times you put yourself in their shoes, then you can understand the strength of character and will to go through it. Right now, there are always those cases, like Syria or whatever, when Christians are being tortured. It has the same thing, but we're blessed that we don't have to do that. We face different sort of challenges, but by the same token, there are still challenges to a different scale. Patience with others is love, patience with yourself is hope, and patience with God is faith. My favorite character in the Bible is Joseph. Why? Because he's such a cool guy. Anyway, he overcame so many troubles, and yet could still be so gracious. And that is amazing. So this is the last part of the story. When I ask my class in the PhD class, like, do they know the story of Joseph? I feel very sad when they say no, they have no idea who Joseph is. That's very depressing to me. I hope everyone here knows the story of Joseph, because it's an amazing story. At the end, Joseph could not restrain himself. It was after he had met all his brothers a few times. And he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I'm Joseph, does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him. They were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near me." So they came near. He said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, to save your lives by great deliverance. So now, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house, and the ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Anyway, for those who don't know the story, it's hard to imagine, right? Like I can't remember how old he was when he was thrown into the well, and then sold to slaves. He was a slave, and then he had to work his way as a slave in a house of Potiphar. And then he was accused wrongly of assaulting the wife. And then was thrown to jail. And then he prophesied that the winemaker would be free and the baker would be killed. And he asked the winemaker not to forget him, but the winemaker did forget him for 2 years. He was stuck in jail for can't remember how many years, but many years. And finally he came out, and then all the rest happened. It's an amazing story, right? That he can, at the end of it all, still have the perspective to see it that way. How many of us, if we have to undergo so many trials, will be so positive? And I think that's the lesson for us in terms of patience. Patience gives us perspective. At the end of your time, while you're suffering, you never think of what it means. But growth only comes through conflict and stress. They said solid food belongs to those who are full age, those who, by reason of use, have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. It's a practice and training into growth and wisdom. So if we do not approach difficulties with a positive attitude, with patience in our heart, we fail to learn the lesson, the most important lesson, that we don't know how the ending will unfold. The journey is only halfway there. You can't know the ending until you reach that point. So that's what Joseph was saying. It's not you who sold me, but it was God's plan that put me to save your life. That's an amazing lesson. Patience and faith, I believe, lead to peace. Right? Philippians 4, be anxious for nothing, but everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your request be made known to God. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Jesus. It's a great passage, and just rejoice in the Lord always. Because that's what it is. Those Christians back then, even though they were being persecuted, wherever you are, if you have patience and faith, you will have peace in your heart. That is guaranteed. There's no question that is what will happen. Patience and gratitude lead to contentment. Philippians 4, 11, 13. Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Such a beautiful passage. If you never felt poverty or you never felt hard times, you never know how to appreciate the good times. That's why I always look back quite fondly as a student. We used to scrounge around looking for a good cheap deal, because we know that when we come here, you don't have much money, so you don't want to just waste your money. So we used to buy like when the chicken shop's closing, there was this chicken shop in Burnside. So they used to sell the chicken wings, like 20 chicken wings for $1. And that was awesome. Like we bought $1 and you have 20 chicken wings. That's great. That's the best. So some of my friends would eat moldy bread, but that was by accident. He was eating a couple of pieces. Then I said, "Isn't that mold on the third piece?" And he said, "Oh, it tastes alright anyway." But so yeah. Anyway, and then instant noodles are your best friend. So there you go. And so, and you're still happy. You don't need to have everything in the world to be happy. And even people who are like really rich, I was reading, someone sent me this excerpt from Steve Jobs' book when he was dying with pancreatic cancer. He was saying, look, at the end of it all, he's got so much money, right? He thought, in the end, it was not the money that counts. It was all the rest of it. Your relationships, your friends, the time when you did have good health. So those are the things, isn't it? So if you're grateful for everything, regardless of what situation you're in, you will be. And peace together, contentment is happiness. In life, all we all seek to find a small space to be happy. Knowing even if it is for a short while. And that is what it is, isn't it? The mission. That's our mission. And even if it is not on this earth, we know that we can find a space of happiness in heaven. That's what it is. So patience is to be able to find peace in time of trouble, and to obtain contentment regardless of the trial. Knowing that God always looks over us. That's in the story of Job even, apart from Joseph. We all know the story of Job, I hope. If I ask my class again, they'll probably say I have no idea who Job is. I'll be very sad again. But I do know that you can't expect everyone to have the same ability or desire as yourself. You know what I mean? Like you wish they could, but you don't expect them to. And I don't think kids nowadays read as much as we used to, because they didn't have anything else to do. So apart from playing in the dirt, you just read books if you're lucky enough to find them. So there it is. So the story of Job is just a great story. You know, he had everything, he lost everything, and he gained back double of what he had. And actually, that's just the first chapter and last chapter. everything in the middle is a lot more philosophical. So kids may not really appreciate it very much. But there you go. So that was just a quick summary of Story of Job. Oops. Oh no, I can't go back. Oh, one-way street. I've missed one passage. That's alright, you guys get out 1 minute early. So now good things come to those who believe. You know, better things come to those who are patient, and the best things come to those who don't give up. So developing patience. One thing I've learned when I'm speaking is that I use all my waiting time to think about my next lesson. And that's what I do. I think Stephen appreciates that now, because now that you're on the roster, you're going to preach soon again, so you have to better start thinking of what you're going to talk next time. And that's such a useful thing. It doesn't have to be that. I'm sure Ruth, who's written a book, I admire her greatly, because I'm going to try and write a book. I think it's a very tough task to write a book. You can use your time to wait, to think of your next thing. Don't use it as a time to get upset. Use it as a time to plan. Right? That's one way to distract yourself. You know, when I'm driving, I think about my next lesson or what I'm going to do. So even if you're stuck in traffic, you don't have to get stressed. And the truth is, most of this impatience actually is self-inflicted. You know, most other people don't really care, really. Look at the long-term goal. Okay? And understand that everything is for our own good. Think of it in a long-term plan. Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. And we are. And we can all say that we love God, and we are all called according to His purpose. So we all have weaknesses, and we all also have strengths. Sometimes we always think of ourselves only in weakness. Our mission is to become a better Christian, a better brother, father, mother, husband, wife, child, or friend. And that's what we shouldn't lose sight of. And what we go through in this life is a training ground. Alright, is to refine yourself, to get better over time. Alright, not to stop and regret, but to move forward. Have a positive attitude towards failure and problems. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work. And who are rejoicing in himself alone and not in another. Each one shall bear his own load. That's what we need to do. You know, help one another, at the same time carry your own responsibilities. Now, God put us here with a plan. You know, when Job was when he lost everything, it was quite shocking. You know, I think nowadays most people have jumped off a building or something. But you know, he was sitting there, and then people said, "Oh, these bad people came and killed and took away all your sheep." And the next person came and said, "They killed all your children." And the next person came and lost everything. You know, it's pretty. I can't imagine. You know, I think you think these guys are joking first, and then before accepting it. Likewise, when Joseph's brothers threw him in the pit, how can you imagine that, right? Like, why would your brothers throw you in the pit? That's just crazy. He would probably think that they're joking or something until they sold him. So they didn't know the future, but they made the best of it. I think that's such a powerful message for us. We don't know the future, but we can trust and rely on God to see us through to the end. But He has a plan for us all, okay, all of us. And all we have to do is to be patient enough for it to be revealed. Okay? And for us here today, we should continue to encourage one another to work together as a family of God. And with that, thank you for your attention.